Hello guys, welcome back. Just a few minutes before class time here. It's 5:24, so 6 minutes from now we'll get our meeting underway. But always good to see you guys. Hi Gary. Um, just make yourself comfortable, and we got one more meeting leading into our nice holiday break. Welcome back, guys. Good to see you. Be right back. Just gonna get a little drink. Hey Rachel, how's it going? Pretty good. Just kind of getting through a lot of the grading work that I have, and watching the news and stuff, following current events. I don't have any major Thanksgiving plans. It's going to be a very small gathering of just me and like a couple of close friends and relatives that are strictly isolating and stuff. But I'm not traveling or anything, so I'm kind of looking forward to having a nice, relaxing week. Yeah, can't complain too much. Semester's been going okay, considering all the things that have been happening in the world. Cats are getting really big, so they're just cute, always running around. Especially Eddie's 10 pounds plus, maybe 11 pounds now. So he's just ballooning up. Thinking of getting him one of those big cat condos. I have like a small one, and they really like it, so I kind of feel guilty that I'm denying them like a big complex one. Maybe cost twice as much, so I might end up buying one of those the next couple weeks. But yeah. All right. Hey Andrea, good to see you there. Hey Cameron. Hi there, Danny. So yeah, just about another minute, and then we'll be ready to go. Hey, Saul. And hi, Brooklyn. Good to see you too. Okay, just a few seconds, and then I'll just jump right into the meeting. Hey, Gabe. How's it going? I remember you said you liked the movie Interstellar, so maybe now if you go back and watch it again after these lectures, you can get even more insight into some of the heady concepts they're playing with in the movie. All right, then. Hey, guys. Welcome back, everybody. It's 5:30. Thanks for your attendance and all your hard work. Stick with it. We just have a couple more weeks to go, so I would tell you if you're watching this now or in the future at any time, come to these lectures, get the most out of them. You know, life is short, and you won't have another chance to be in a philosophy class like this probably. So just try to come to the meetings and have some good, interesting discussions and lectures. But yeah, this is the last meeting before we go away for our Thanksgiving holiday. That's all next week, and then we will be back resuming in the same order as we were moving in when we get back from the break. Hey Ronald, hey Sierra. So I'm just going to quickly recap the stuff that we were doing last meeting, and then we'll continue forward from there. We are now engaged in a discussion of philosophy of mind. The philosophy of mind is another major topic in philosophy, and it's all about consciousness. It's all about the mental life. So, you know, your ability to think, feel, perceive, have the five senses, have thoughts, dreams, hopes, fears, pain, pleasure. Just being able to sense and experience anything is having consciousness. And the philosophy of mind is interested in the question of what's the nature of consciousness. Is it just physical? Is there something about it that cannot be explained physically, or what? And we were talking about how there are these two schools of thinking in philosophy of mind. One is monism. Monism says that all things in the universe are made just out of one kind of substance fundamentally. And dualism says, on the other hand, that there's two substances that make everything up. For a monist, the one and only substance that makes everything could be one of two possibilities. It could just be that it's all made out of matter, physical matter. So that kind of monism is called physicalism. And we're going to develop and expand on that a little more today. But yeah, physicalism says that everything's made out of physical matter, atoms, basically, if you boil it down. Even me and you, even our consciousness and our thoughts, those are also just physical, phenomena that have to do with the brain. If you're a physicalist, then you would deny that there could be a soul or that there could be consciousness apart from the functioning brain. There's also another version of monism, but I told you I think that it's sort of on the sidelines now. But the other version of monism is called idealism, and they claim that the one substance that makes everything is ideas rather than matter. Anyway, don't want to spend much more time on that, but just so you know, that's another possible version of monism. Dualism says that both of these substances exist, and both of them are what composes all the things of reality. So according to a dualist, according to dualism, there's both physical matter and there's mind. Now, mind is defined as something that does not have any extension in space and yet is conscious. So like just a pure spirit or soul that can think, but does not have any kind of physical material basis. And matter is just anything that is extended in space. The fundamental unit of matter would be the atom. So on a dualist perspective, both of the substances exist, not just one, but both. And we've already now considered one of the arguments for dualism. That was right by Descartes. So Descartes got a long argument that we spent most of the last lecture talking about. And I'm just quickly going to run through some of the big steps in the argument. This is much faster, of course, than the real lecture we had on it before, but just so that we can get it out there and recap it. The argument says that, okay, using the method of doubt that Descartes discusses, everything that you perceive with the five senses can be doubted because there's a possibility that you're just having a very realistic dream. Even math and logic can be doubted because of the case of a possible malicious deceiver. But one thing that can't be doubted is that you exist because you are thinking. So you know that you are at least some mind that thinks, even if the body is an illusion. Okay, well, in this mind that you have, that you know exists because you're thinking, there are ideas. And one of the ideas is the idea of God. And he says that idea holds a special position because among all ideas in your mind, that's the only idea of an infinite being. From there, he says that since the idea of God is an idea of an infinite being, it must have been caused by something that has at least that much reality, because the cause of the idea cannot be finite if the idea is of something infinite. So this means he thinks that there is an infinite being, and that's God. And now he says, well, since God has been proven to exist, we all know that God is perfectly good, and thus he's not a deceiver. And what that means is that if he's not a deceiver, then when you have clear and distinct perceptions, those must be true. Otherwise, God would be tricking you, but he would not do that because he's perfectly good. So clear and distinct perceptions have to be true. And then he mentions that one thing that is clear and distinct is that if two things could be clearly conceived of as existing separately, then they really are two separate things. I believe I used the example of me and the watch last time. That's just a kind of throwaway example, but the point was that even though the watch is on my arm, it doesn't have to be, and you can clearly conceive of me and the watch being separated. And since that's clearly conceivable, it turns out that me and the watch are actually two separate things. We're not the same thing. So last but not least, he then continues by saying, well, the mind and the body can be clearly conceived of as existing separately. Part of the reason for that is because even when the method of doubt has been used, we entertain the possibility that the body is an illusion, but the mind, we know, can't be an illusion because we are using it to think. Do I have a new watch? Yes, I do. But I had it also on Tuesday. I've got it. When did I get it? I got it on the day that it came in the mail on the day that they declared Biden the winner. What was that? That was Saturday of the previous week. Anyway, it's a Garmin watch. Yes, it's. You want to know? It's the Garmin Fenix 6X Solar Pro. So that's the watch that it is. It's a very nice fitness watch. But back to what I was saying, right? Last thing, but in the argument, it's possible to clearly conceive of the mind and the body existing separately, which means that they are actually two separate things. We can imagine the two things existing separately because the body can be doubted, but not the existence of the conscious mind. So since it's conceivable that the two things can be existing separately, they really are, since God makes sure that clear and distinct perceptions are true. Now, that was really the main argument. I added a little bit of additional comment at the end that he says there are also a couple of further things that are also now known as true because they're also clear and distinct. And you may remember I said that he's now prepared to tell us that the external world really exists and it's not just a dream or a figment of your mind. He says that is clear and distinct because, first of all, memories are less vivid than current perception is, which can only be explained on the assumption that when you have current experiences, you're having the experience of external objects that are around you. Another reason that it's clear that there's an external world is because you can't just perceive whatever you would like to perceive just by willing it into being, nor can you control such that you only have favorable perceptions or experiences. Now, there's this last thing I wanted to mention about Descartes, and then we're totally moving on from him, but there was this other clear and distinct perception that he also touches on in that part of Meditation 6. And so I'm just going to say it this way. One more clear and distinct, just C and D for short, perception, which, again, remember, to him, this is something that has to be true because God is not a deceiver, and he would make sure that the clear and distinct perceptions are true. So one more clear and distinct perception is that I have a body. So, I mean, it may seem obvious to you, of course you have a body, but remember Descartes says that we're using the method of doubt. And so the possibility that it's just a dream body that you're dreaming having is a live possibility. But now he says, just kidding, never mind, you do have a body, and why is this now something that he can say he's sure about? It's because it's clear and distinct that you have a body, and now having proven the existence of God, he thinks that's enough to show that these clear and distinct things really are true. But why is it so clear and distinct that you have a body? Well, I'll tell you. This is clear and distinct. And this is obvious, so clear, so distinct, because, okay, a couple of reasons. Number one, I can control the actions of this body, but not others. I can control this body with my mind, but not others. Okay, so one obvious fact about being a person that's alive, having a body, is that if you just want to, just think about it, you can make your body do stuff. Like right now, I just clap my hands. And why did it happen? Well, because I wanted to do it to show you that if I think of something, then I can make my body do it, or snapping my fingers, or just, anything. So I can't, though, control any other person's body just with my thoughts. Like I can say, in my own case, do the finger snap. But I can't like look over in someone's direction and be like, they're about to do a finger snap, watch, and then they just do it. See, that's not how it works. I have only control over this one body, not others. Of course, I could force someone else to do it, like you snap your fingers before I hurt you or something, but that's not what I'm talking about. I mean just mental control. Like I am the one that's in the control of his body and its movements. So that makes it clear, at least, and distinct, that it's your body because you've got control over it and not others. So you have an intimate, special connection with the one body that you're in and not others. A second reason that he gives that this is so clear and distinct is that that I experience sensations when this body is given some type of stimuli, but not other ones. Okay, so I experience sensations when this body is given a stimuli, but not others. Sorry, just best marker ever, but not others. Okay, so hopefully it's not too hard to read. It just says, I experience sensations when this body is given a stimuli, but not when others are. Okay, so like if I pinch my arm right now, ouch, hurts a little bit, I feel the pain because the pinching action is being applied to this body. But if I pinch myself, there's no other person in the world that goes, ouch, that hurts, because it does not affect that other body. Okay, and likewise, if another person is going through pain, pleasure, being tickled, or whatever, I don't feel it. Like, so if you stub your toe, I don't go, ooh, ow, my toe, because it didn't happen to me. Now, if this was not my body, and I was just like, I don't know, like a captain on a ship, if the ship gets hit with a cannonball, the captain doesn't say, ouch, because the cannonball is affecting something that is not a part of him. But of course, we're different. If you get hit with a projectile of some kind, it's not like you're just looking down at some ship that you're standing on like, oh, it took damage. No, you actually feel the pain. So that makes it clear that this is not just any random body, but that there's somehow an intimate connection that you and your mind has with it. So now he's claiming that you actually do have a body, and it's clear for these couple of reasons. He also mentions a third one, which I'll just quickly say, and that is that you can't get away from the one body that you're in, but you can move and separate yourself, distance yourself from any other body. Okay, so like social distancing, right? If you want to stay away from all the people and don't want to get sick, you can definitely get far away from them. But one person who you can't seem to get away from is you. So, you're in the body, you move around wherever it goes. You can separate yourself from any other body in space, but not the one that you're in. And so that makes it seem, again, pretty clear and distinct that it's yours. Okay, so done with Descartes. Just wanted to finish with those couple of remaining notes. But we also now have to talk about the other side of this whole debate, okay? Because remember, it's dualism versus physicalism. So we've now given, I think, a pretty detailed rundown of at least one famous argument and author for dualism. Now we got to look at the other side of this coin and see what's going on with physicalism. So that brings us to this man, Daniel Stoljar. Okay, Daniel Stoljar. He's a still living, somewhat young in general terms, philosopher. He wrote this in 2005, and it's just called Physicalism. Okay, so in his paper, Physicalism, that we're now looking at, he first of all just wants to define the concept of physicalism, give a good definition of it, and then he wants to try and deal with two questions about it. First of all, what does it really mean? And then after that, is it true? Okay, so that is his goal. Define physicalism, and then answer two questions. First off, what does it really mean? And then after that, is it true? Okay, so let's get to the first part.
as he begins, he says, here's what I think is the essential definition of physicalism. And in his definition, it's actually a very simple concept. It's just this: everything is physical. Everything is physical. That's what the position of physicalism is as he sees it. Everything's physical, and what that means is that it's not just most things are physical, not just some things, everything. 100% of all things are physical things. There's not one thing that is not physical. Everything is. And that is to include consciousness, thought, experience, perception. It's all just physical stuff. And so physicalism is a position about what everything in the universe is made out of. It says everything in the universe, no matter what it is something that's just made out of matter. And that's all there is to it. It says that the actual world is a physical world, and so according to this view, and he says this, although we have other subjects that we study, although there are other sciences, other academic disciplines, if you're a physicalist, then you would argue that all of those things are indirectly just branches of physics. And it may not seem obvious immediately. How is it that, like, say, if I study history, I'm looking at something that's actually physics in the end? Well, because of this. If you're a physicalist, you think everything is a physical thing. So, like, take some historical event that you could study in a history class, like what is the French Revolution or World War II? Well, according to a physicalist, what that whole event was just a bunch of physical life forms on the surface of a planet, planet Earth, interacting in certain ways that operate according to natural physical laws, and we describe that as the event known as whatever, fill in the blank, World War II, French Revolution, American Revolution. But it's all just physical processes happening with biological life forms on a planet, and all the physical laws governing this stuff are just natural and based on physics. What is a person who's studying poetry or writing a poem? It might not seem to have anything to do with physics. But according to physicalism, the poet, he or she, is just, again, a life form with a brain and a central nervous system that, on the basis of certain inputs, gives these poetry inscriptions as outputs, and it's a physical phenomenon that's happening, even though it doesn't, at least intuitively, seem to be at first. So there may be other sciences and other fields of study, but in the end, they all boil down to some physical stuff. Okay, so next up, he's going to talk to us about these big questions that he says we must answer. Before I move on to that, though, I just want to make one quick side point. There have been other types of monism if you go back throughout history. In fact, if we go way back thousands of years, even to the time before Socrates, the pre-Socratics, as they call them, the Greek thinkers that existed even before Socrates, there were some of them that were into the idea of monism, but they had some very kind of, I don't know, today that would be looked at as like funny or antique ancient versions of monism. So like one guy was Thales. Thales believed that the whole universe is just made out of one substance, but he thought that the one substance was water. Imagine that, right? So everything around you is all just various states of water. Now, why would a person have thought this? Well, because, I mean, he had some basic reasons. He could tell by looking at, states of water that it could take on the condition of a gas or a liquid, or that if frozen, it could be a solid. He noticed that if you breathe on your hand, moisture is deposited on the hand. And so he thought maybe everything is just various states of water kind of in various forms. And then another guy thought everything was made out of fire. Another guy thought everything was made out of earth. Well, anyway, now it's 2020, and so we don't have those versions of monism anymore. But we have physicalism, and it says that it's all just made out of atoms. It's all made out of physical matter. Okay, so next up, what are these big questions? Two main questions that he thinks we want to grapple with so that we can fully understand and even defend physicalism. So two main questions about physicalism. Okay, so first he states what he calls the interpretation question. the interpretation question, and then the other one is known as, or he calls it, the truth question. Interpretation question, and then separate from that, the truth question. So yeah, first off, let me write about this so-called interpretation question. The interpretation question basically asks, what does it mean? What does it mean to say that everything is physical? So one question that we want to try to answer. What does it exactly mean, though, to say what physicalism says? Physicalism says everything's physical. So question, what exactly does that statement mean? He believes that there's a way of explaining what it means, and he's going to answer that question in a minute. But so far, I'm just telling you what the question is. Now, separate from that is the truth question. And the truth question asks something slightly different. It's asking, is it true? Is physicalism true? Is it true that everything is physical? What does it mean to say that everything is physical? And then also, is it true that everything is physical? Okay, now next up, we're going to try and go through these questions and give some possible good answers for them. But the author says that you actually have to deal with one of these questions before the other one, because to answer one of them, the other one kind of has to already be answered first. So I don't know, what would be your guess? Which of those two do you think you kind of have to deal with first before you can tackle the other one? Which one will have to come first? And then you can move on to this other one. First question in the order of operations? Yes, good, Andrea. The first question should be the interpretation question, because if you don't know what a statement even means, then you're not in position to determine whether it is true or false. Right. Like if I told you guys, watch out because be careful on your Thanksgiving holiday, because I've heard that there's blogs all over the place right now. You're not going to be able to say, oh, let me determine if that's true or false if you don't even know what this word blogs means. That's a made-up word, but I'm just giving you this for the sake of discussion. If you didn't know how to interpret a concept, then you couldn't go out checking to see whether or not a statement about it is true or not. So we have to get clear on what it really means, and then from there we can go on and see if we think it's true. Okay, so then we'll now deal with the interpretation question, but the way of doing that is to refer to the concept of what's called supervenience. So now I'm going to mention supervenience in order for us to try and answer this here question. Okay, so the goal right now is let's answer the interpretation question. Let's find out what it means to say that everything is physical. And this requires us to now dive into the term and the idea of supervenience. There it is written, supervenience. S-U-P-E-R-V-E-N-I-E-N-C-E. This is a word that's like a philosophy piece of jargon. You're not going to see this word used in too many other areas, sometimes in physics, sometimes in some science, but it's most at home in philosophy, and I've noticed that a lot of spell checkers and stuff don't even recognize it because it's such a term of art to the field. But let's go into it, and I'll try to explain it. Supervenience is an idea that can best be understood by utilizing the example of a dot matrix picture. Okay, so I'm going to mention and talk to you guys about the idea of a dot matrix picture here. Okay, so if you look very closely, maybe under a magnifying glass, at a printed photo, let's say, like in a newspaper or magazine, or like comic book, whatever. If you look at that image, like say it's just, I don't know, a picture of the White House or something, or the president, and it's just that's the picture that's on the cover of the newspaper, the front page. Well, if you look at it under close magnification, I don't know if you've ever done this, but you would notice that when you zoom in really close, you see that it's actually formed by a bunch of tiny little dots that are arranged in a given order. So little dots of ink, basically, are pressed on a grid, and that allows us to reproduce and duplicate the same image. Basically, we have like an open grid, and we can imprint onto it a coordinate set of ink dots. And by these dots having the various coloration that they do, and having the dots and non-dots at each position along the grid, the image then gets displayed, okay? So kind of, you know what I'm talking about. I can give you some other examples that are similar in a same sense. Have you ever heard of like mosaic art, right? Like that's an art technique where tiny little tiles are the bits in this case instead of ink dots. But the little tiles are arranged so that when you put them in a big arrangement, they form a big image, like a scene that you might depict in artwork, right? So when you back out, you just see the big scene. If you get in close, you see ever so many little tiles placed together to form the scene. Does this make sense to you guys? You all kind of have a feel for what I'm talking about? It's like I'm just describing a big picture that's made out of tiny little elements. In one case, the elements that I'm referring to are dots of ink, like you see in a dot matrix picture. In another case, I mentioned a mosaic, which is formed by tiny little tiles. Or pointillist art, that's another good example of Sierra, yes. Here, let me give you another example. And this is one that's directly relevant to the current situation we are in. Right now, you're looking at me on a screen. How is that working? Is it magic? It's not magic, actually. So on the back of your viewing device, whether it's a cell phone, a computer monitor, a television monitor, if you look very closely at it, if you get right up to the screen and you even magnified it a little bit, you would see these tiny little things against the back panel, except I'm not referring to dots of ink nor tiles. But what are those tiny little bits that form the resolution of your viewing device? The term for those are what? Do you know this word? They are pixels. That's correct, Sierra. So what is a pixel? A pixel is a little tricolor panel, very, very small, and they form a grid against the back of your viewing device. So how is an image projected onto the screen? Well, basically, digital instructions are given to the matrix of pixels so that each one is illuminated with a particular hue, and they end up generating the image. That's why another device with a similar resolution, we can just port over to it and share the same photo, the same video, and the same exact thing will show up on another device because identical instructions are mapped onto it in terms of how to assign pixelized coordinates to each point along the screen. Okay, so I'm just trying to hit you with like 3 or 4 different interchangeable examples of supervenience. What we would say in any of these cases where you have a big composite structure and it's made out of these little individual bit pieces is that the large scale image supervenes on the position and arrangement of the little element points. So now let me draw for you on this board. This is not going to be a great drawing, both because I'm not very good at drawing, but also because these are going to be large dots or pixels, if you will, because I'm using a crude tool, this marker. But whatever, we'll just work with it. So here's the frame, and here is our dot matrix / pixelated image. So I'm making these like bunch of little dashed dots because I'm trying to like simulate that they're, ink dots, pixels. Okay, now, I hope it's at least somewhat recognizable. Maybe anybody could take a wild guess. What is this scene that I'm trying to show in this picture? That's not a very philosophical question. Just what is that? What's that picture? Okay, good, Ronald. It's like it's an ocean day. These are waves, right? This is the sun shining down. Maybe there's some seagulls or birds flapping around in the sky, okay? Sometimes in the past, I've tried to draw this, and the students like, is it the mountain range or these mountain peaks? I would understand if you had thought so, but anyway, yeah, I was going for day at the beach, ocean, okay? So yeah, let's say this is a dot matrix image. Okay, little piece of terminology now to continue on our discussion. The author next refers to the concept of what are called global features, okay? Okay, so global features are just big picture aspects of these composites that we are discussing. So it is a large scale, a big picture aspect of the composite, okay? Okay, so let me provide more commentary here. Global feature, definition, a big picture aspect of the composite. So a big picture aspect is basically something that is formed from the assembled little dots put together. It's not one of the dots, it is something that is generated from many of the dots being placed together in a combination. So if you follow me then, tell me, you should be able to use this new terminology in connection with this picture. What is one of the global features you think of this dot matrix, so to speak, picture? What would be one of the global features in that image? Let's see your response. Just what do you think? Or have I missed it? Is Brooklyn and Rachel, are those recent comments? I don't exactly know if they just came in, but do let me know. What could be a global feature of this here image? There are many of them. There's more than one, but like, for example, one of them could be the what? Oh yeah, okay, good, there we go. So the water, the sun, the ocean, the birds, good, because it's some like macroscopic thing that's formed from the microscopic little dots. So yeah, it's like a feature of the picture that you could point out that is created by many of the little dots combined. Okay, good. So now I want you to follow along on this little journey into logical analysis. Imagine the following, okay? Suppose we have another dot matrix image side by side with this one. And suppose that in the second case, the grid has the exact same assignment of dots given to it. So it's a dot for dot duplicate of this picture here. If we have another one which replicates in the exact same order and arrangement the position of each dot, then by comparison to the first, how would the second picture look? You understand my question? So we have this is like picture A. Say that picture B is a dot for dot replica of A. Then how would B appear visually? Just a question. It would appear the same as A. Yes, exactly. It would have no differences because the only thing that causes or creates these features, the global features, is the arrangement, the underlying arrangement of the dots. So, by hypothesis, if we had a second matrix with the exact same positions assigned to every dot or pixel, then it's going to just reproduce the image. It's going to have all the same global features. Okay, so now let's use this terminology to apply that point we just stated. If you have two dot matrices, and they are identical in the way the dots are arranged, so identical arrangement dot for dot. If they have the same arrangement of dots, then they are going to definitely have the same what in common? Same dot arrangement in the two matrices implies, logically, that if they're the same at the level of each dot, then they must also have the same what? Global features. Perfect, Danny, yes. So if we make the parts the same, then the whole that is formed by the parts are going to be also exactly the same. Okay, now, similar but slightly different question. I want to imagine this now. Suppose we have dot matrix B and this is A, and we compare them. B, we say, let's imagine, is just a lot like A, except it's slightly different. Like one of the birds is missing. So dot matrix B is just like A, except without one of the birds. If they have a different global feature, right, and that is a different global feature, like in one case there's a bird, in the other case there isn't. If they have different global features, then because of that, they must also have different what? So if the big picture features are different, then, you know, following this like part-whole relation that we were talking about, if they're different at the, you know, the large scale level, then they must also be different in what other way? Different in the, yes, position and arrangement of the dots. The dot arrangement would have to be different. Okay, good. So here's the point that we've just established. If you have two matrices and they're identical in the arrangement of primary elements, then they're going to have the same global features. On the other hand, if you do have two matrices and they differ in terms of their global features, then they must also be different in terms of each, the position of each dot. Okay, and like, you know, another case, I can imagine we have dot matrix B and it's like this, but it has additional stuff, like it has a surfer in here and like a third bird or something. Well, in that case, different global features, they can't have the same dots, right? If they did have the same dots, they wouldn't have had different global features. Okay, so we are now going to carry this whole discussion over to physical reality, because that's what this is really all leading towards. This here is just kind of building a bridge towards the analysis of physicalism that we were most interested in here. Okay, so according to physicalism, the idea of the dot matrix that we've discussed is very similar to actual reality, because reality, like look around you, this universe that you're a part of, it also has all kinds of like large scale objects, and we could say that those are formed also out of tiny little bits. Just like in a dot matrix, all the large scale features are formed out of either dots or pixels or whatever. In reality, things like this table, this chair, me, you, cars, you know, planes, trains, automobiles, everything that's out there, all physical objects are also formed out of primary little units. But what would those be again? Now we're not talking about pixels or ink dots. But in physical reality, what is the stand-in for the so-called dots? What's the thing that are tiny little pieces that make everything in actual reality rather than in a picture or whatever, or on a digital viewing device? Now we're not referring to dots, but tell me again, yes, atoms, correct, Andrea. Physical atoms, little atoms of matter. Okay, so what physicalism is saying is that everything around us is made out of the atom. So supervenience is used as a verb here. What this means is that all the large-scale aspects of reality supervene on the position and the placement of the atoms, okay? Just as in this image, the global features of it supervene on the position of dots, meaning that if there were another dot matrix, the same dot arrangement, it would have to have all the same global features. So now, in comparison with the picture shown on the board, are there global features of reality? Yes. What could you say is, for example, a global feature of reality? Now, I'm not asking you to pick something out of the picture on the board, but out of reality. What would be, and you've got almost infinite choices here, so just shouldn't be too tough. What would you give me as an example of something that is a global feature of reality? Okay, Earth. Good, Brooklyn. Yes, the planet Earth is a big object. It's not an atom. It's a thing that's made out of tons and tons and innumerably many atoms. Different physical traits. Sure, Danny. I mean, you could say like a person's, I don't know, the shape of their nose or hairline or anything else, even hair color, sure. Could be a global feature, but color is it's an attribute rather than an object. So in a way, that's a less easy example to work with. But Ronald, you say the borders of countries, but that's also kind of conventional. The border is shown on the map, but physically you just walk around and there's just land, you know, even if there's like people that have guns and stuff trying to guard and defend one territory from another, the idea that there's an actual boundary is not really physical. So I'm thinking more about objects, guys. Hair color and borders are, I mean, now you're getting so abstract. Why don't you just say a cat, a dog, the White House, the moon, the planet Earth? Let me ask another question. Are you a global feature according to the analysis provided here? Yeah, watch would be a fair example too, but what about you? Are you a global feature according to physicalism? Yes, you are, because you're an object in the universe. And on physicalism, everything in the universe, not just like matter and, well, okay, it is all matter, but not just like inanimate objects and like tables and chairs and watches, but everything's just made out of atoms, even me and you. Okay, so what physicalism says is that all the global features of reality, just like in these dot matrices, are ultimately just combinations of the little atoms that build everything up. So what is this bird? What is this sun? What is this ocean in this dot matrix? It's just a combination of a bunch of atoms, ink dots aggregated together. And in physical reality, looking around you, your table, chair, refrigerator, PlayStation, your car, even your own body, it's all just made out of matter according to physicalism. So now I want to get into this thing about comparing two side-by-side matrices, okay? We said just now that if you had two dot matrices which were identically arranged in terms of the dots, then they would have to have all the same global features, correct? So now this is a little bit of mental gymnastics, so try to follow along. I want you to imagine a second universe, okay? I hope you can follow me that far already, because I know it's like one universe. But imagine there was another universe, a whole separate universe from ours. I want you to imagine that that secondary universe has the exact same position of atoms as ours does. So it's an atom for atom copy. It's like wherever there's the position and placement of some atom here, it's exactly duplicated in this twin universe. Okay, so if we have another universe that is atomically identical to ours, then what would that second universe be like by comparison with ours? You understand this question? I'm asking you to compare two cases. Universe A, our universe, with the possibility of universe B, which has got exactly the same atomic facts. If that was so, then what would the second universe be like? We're just taking this here analysis and applying it to physical reality. So, same atomic facts. They would be the same in all their global respects. Yes, Andrea, and also Ashkan, that's correct. So if there was another universe that was physically identical to ours, then it would have all the same features as our universe has too. And what physicalism is saying is that if there were a duplicate universe to our universe, it would contain all the same events and objects, and it would even contain the same psychological phenomena. So now you're getting a deeper sense of this. What is it for you to be a human being having a thought right now? If I tell you, think of a cow, it's in your mind, just a thought. What is it to be a human being having any thought about any topic, even just the one I mentioned right now? It's to be a biological life form with a brain and a particular physical configuration. And if there was another closed physical universe, which had the exact same distribution of atoms, then there would be a duplicate of you in that universe having the same thoughts. So what this is saying is that your thoughts are utterly the product of physical atoms combined together. There's nothing non-physical about it, and in fact, the exact same scenario could be duplicated, hypothetically, of course not really, because there's probably only one universe, but it could be duplicated if, by hypothesis, there was a second closed physical system. So with the same distribution of atoms. So now we're allowed to finally get to this Stoljar's concise, somewhat technical statement of what physicalism means. And he puts it like this, and this is written on page 580. So here's his concise statement. Physicalism is true at a possible world W just in case any world which is an atomic duplicate of W is a duplicate of W in all respects. Okay. So physicalism is true at a possible world W just in case the following thing holds. Just in case any world which we could compare to that W, which is atomically identical, would also be identical to it in every other way. So if physicalism is true, then suppose we had this second universe, which was an atomic copy of ours. Question, would Trump have won the 2016 election in this atomic copy of our universe? Would that have happened? That's just yes or no for you. But if you follow me, you'll have a real answer. Why are you saying no? Sierra, I lost you. Ronald, you too? Andrea? Huh? Come on, guys. Why are you saying no? Just explain yourself then. Why are you saying no? Because did you understand the question? I said, if suppose we have a second universe, which is an atomic copy of ours. If it's an atomic copy of ours, would Trump still have won the election in 2016? Are you thinking that I'm just trying to diss Trump? I mean, yeah, I'm not a fan, but at the same time, this has nothing to do with politics. I'm just making a general point. Maybe I should give a different example. But actually, I want to stick to this. Why would it still have happened in the second universe, which is an atomic copy of ours? In 2016. Ah, yeah, I said 2016. Never mind. If you guys are thinking of 2020 because we just had an election, that's not what I was asking. Okay, so let me give you a different question because maybe the election is so much on your mind that as soon as I mention the name Trump and the election, we just lost the plot. Okay, Ronald, why are you confused? Ronald, Trump lost this election. Let's not be confused about that. But he won the 2016 election. Of course, there was some degree of interference that people talk about, but since he won so many votes this time, I don't find it necessarily implausible that he might have had enough to get those swing states in 2016. Look, it's too current, but maybe I can go back in the past a little farther. But let me just kind of restate exactly what I was saying and make the point clear. I was just giving you an example. If hypothetically there was a second universe, which is an atomic duplicate of ours, basically all the same historical events and facts would be the same. Maybe I chose the election because I thought it would be a topical, kind of relevant, relatable example. But the point is that, yeah, in 2016, since Trump was, named the winner and Hillary conceded and all of that, the same phenomena would have played out in a duplicate universe with the same atomic facts because the atomic facts govern all the large-scale events down to the last detail. So let me give you a different one. Would there still have been the attack on Pearl Harbor back in the 40s? Would that have still happened in this duplicated universe, which is atomically a copy of ours? Yes, okay, good. Would there be a version of you, a doppelganger of you, watching a philosophy lecture in the year 2020 in that other world? Yes. So we're not saying that such a world exists, but we're trying to get you to understand that if physicalism is true, then everything's made out of atoms. And so if there was another atomic situation, which was a duplicate of this, then it couldn't be different in any way. Now, physicalists differ from dualists about that because dualists would say that your consciousness and your thought is not totally controlled by the physical material facts about your body. Like a dualist would say, even if there was a physical carbon copy of this universe, the mind could be having different thoughts because the mind is not necessarily rooted in physical reality. But if you believe in physicalism, then whatever the brain thinks of and whatever you experience as a consciousness or thought is a byproduct of the constellation of atoms that form your body and brain. And so if we had the same configuration of atomic facts, then even those psychological things would have recurred in that duplicate. Okay, so we've now, he thinks, answered the so-called interpretation question, which is, what does it mean to say that everything is physical? He points out then that what it does mean is that everything supervenes on atoms, such that if there was a copy of the atomic distribution of facts, it would contain also all the same large-scale facts. And, also, if in this other universe, everything's the same except something very small, like everything's the same except in universe B, you did not attend this lecture right now. Well, then there would have to be different atomic facts because if the global features differ, the atomic facts also have to be different. Okay, so now to the truth question. That's the last point that's referred to in his article. He now wants to go on and try and defend that it is actually true. And he has two arguments that he gives to make the case that physicalism is in fact true. He believes physicalism and he defends it. So now we're going to see why he thinks it's true. There's two arguments he gives. First, he calls it the argument from causal closure. The argument from causal closure. Now, I don't want you to have a typo. This says causal. It doesn't say casual, but that's a common spelling error that I've seen students make because they are spelled similarly. It's just the difference in the order of S and U here. But this says causal, C-A-U-S-A-L. Casual is spelled C-A-S-U-A-L. And they're not related in meaning. Causal means cause and effect. Casual means like, I don't know, you wear sweats to work or something, but that's not the same idea. So the argument from causal closure. Okay, now the argument has three premises that lead to the conclusion of the argument. And let me just start by writing out the first of the premises. So premise one of the argument says this: every event which has a cause has a physical cause. Okay, so all the first premise is saying is that if something happens, if some event happens, no matter what it is, big, small, or anything in between, it had to have a cause. And whatever the cause was something physical. Because this is a physical world, stuff can't happen unless something physically caused it to happen. So every event that has a cause at least has one physical cause. For example, like, I don't know, suppose that you go out to your car where it's parked, and you're a little sad because you noticed that overnight a heavy tree branch has fallen onto the hood and created a dent. Okay, so that's something that happened. That's an event, the denting of the car. But what's the cause? Well, we can trace it back, and at every stage, it's something physical. Well, what's the cause of the dent? The impact of the tree branch. What's the cause of the branch hitting the car? Well, the weakening of the bow by, like, I don't know, physical pressures of wind or like passing animals, and then the angle of its fall, given its mass, and the currents of wind in the air lead to the impact on the car. And we could go even further back. Why is there a bow there? Oh, because the process of photosynthesis caused the tree to grow over time, eventually establishing a position in the air under which your car was. So, I mean, that's just one random example, but it could be anything else. Here's a table. That's something that's in my house, so the event that it's here is true. It's got a physical cause, and we could go back in time if we really knew the facts to determine exactly what those physical bases or causes are for this object. Okay, so every event which has a cause has a physical cause. That's premise one. Now premise two. Premise two is interesting because it says mental events can cause physical events. Okay, so all the premise two is talking about is how your mind, by thinking, can just cause your body to do things, to elicit behavior. Okay, so like if I say I'm gonna snap my fingers, then it happens. And that was me making a thought turn into an actual behavior, right? If I'm out there and I'm playing basketball, and I take a shot and I make a shot, right? Like I just hit a jumper or something or a free throw. That's an event that I caused by thinking, you know, let me use my arms and hands and whatever to release the ball in a skillful way where it will go in the net. So everything that you ever do as a human being is your mind controlling your observable behavior. If you're in a class, right? Well, we don't have physical classrooms for the moment. Who knows when that'll happen again? But go back in your memory to times where you were in class and you raise your hand to be called on by the teacher. When your hand goes up, your hand is physically going up. So that's something that's happening with your body. But what's the cause? What's the cause of the physical arm going up? Well, the physical event of the arm going up is caused by the mind making a decision. I would like to ask a question and get an answer. Elbow in the rim like Vince Carter. Well, yes, you know, it's true that Vince Carter was able to dunk over Frederick Weiss in the year 2000. That's one of the most iconic, probably the best dunk ever. So yeah, you could say that like his amazing dunk, where he jumped straight over a 7'2" French guy, is a physical event, and it was caused by the will and the decision that he had as he was playing the sport. if you're playing an instrument, you know, the music's coming out while you're playing, and that's physically happening, and it's all traced back to thoughts and mental control over the body. So anyway, all this is saying is that thoughts can lead to actions. Take the case of JFK's assassination. What's the cause of his death? Well, he was hit by a bullet. What's the cause of the bullet? Physically, it's the release of the bullet from the firing mechanism of the firearm. And why did that happen? Well, the physical cause was the application of pressure to the trigger. And why did that happen? We can say, oh, it's because nerve signals were sent to the hand of the shooter, causing the finger to contract on the trigger mechanism. And that was caused by signals that were sent from the brain to the muscle group in the hand. But why were the signals sent from the brain to that hand? Now we can't say anything except because the person had a will and an intention to act that way. So they thought they would do it, and that caused it to happen. Okay, so I'm just giving you a bunch of random examples, but they all have a similar theme, which is that the mind can cause the body to do stuff. Okay, so then third premise comes in. The third premise, it sort of looks technical at first, you know, the way it's written, but I'll break it down and bring it down to earth for you. So just bear with me, at least at first, while I write it. It says this. So if an event A causes an event B, then in that case, there is no other event C which is different from A and which also causes B. Okay. We're here also, the bottom of the board kind of got a little dull with the old marker. I'll get a new pack over the break. But anyway, yeah, so third premise, and I'll read it and try and explain. It says, if an event A causes an event B, then there's no other event C that's different from A, which is also a second cause of B. So I know there's like A, B, and C and all this cause and effect talk, but all it's saying is actually something simple. It's saying this: if you have an event, it just has one cause, not more than one. Not exactly one, not zero and not more than one. So for every effect, there's how many causes? Just one. This is just saying if, sorry. Can you please bear with me while we correct one thing in this note? You need to add the term A here. Can that be easily done? Just a little indent, put A. I meant to write A, and now that I looked back at it, I noticed that I omitted it, but it's supposed to have A there. So repeating, what it's saying is that if A causes B, that's the only cause of B. It's not that there's anything else that's different from A, which is also causing B. It's just the one thing A. Okay, so in more simple terms, the third premise is just claiming for every effect, there's how many causes? Tell me again. For every effect, for every event, how many causes are there behind the event, according to premise 3? Let's see. You tell me. For each effect, there is one cause and exactly one cause. Correct, Rachel. That's all that says. So when we put these three premises together, it leads to the conclusion of the argument. Now, I want to leave the premises up here, and I also want to write the conclusion. Formally speaking, a conclusion is supposed to be below the premises. So in your own notes, it would be best for you to draw a line here and then write this conclusion below. But since I have limits on board space, I'm going to draw a little arrow up here and put the conclusion above. But it would ideally be shown below because the standard form of an argument is the conclusion comes at the end. Okay, so here's the conclusion of this argument. And it's actually a simple statement. It's just that mental events are physical events. Okay, now let me try and explain how these claims lead to that conclusion. So from premise 1, each event that happens, every event that happens, has a physical cause. From premise 2, your mind can be a cause of your physical behavior. So if your mind causes your physical behavior, and if every event which has a cause has a physical cause, then the mind which causes the action is a physical cause. The third premise is just using itself to exclude any other cause aside from the physical one. So what this is saying is, basically your brain is the physical cause of your observed behavior. So your physical brain is the physical cause of your observed behavior, and there is no other event which also causes your physical behavior. So basically this is saying that we know your brain causes your actions and observed behavior. And this is just saying we exclude any other possible cause aside from that. That would be to have more causes than are necessary or even possible to explain the effect. So your brain sending like signals to your arms and your mouth and your different body parts to cause you to do stuff is the physical basis for the behavior that you produce. And all this is saying is that there's no other like non-physical basis also. So this third premise is denying that it could be both the brain, but also separate from that, like a ghost or a soul that is not physical. The physical cause of your behavior, this says, is the only possible cause, because it does not make sense to say that the brain causes the behavior, which we know is true, but also something else that has nothing to do with the physical brain, like a soul that somehow resides in the body, but yet is not a physical part of the body. You understand what I'm saying? So this conclusion that says mental events are physical events is a defense of physicalism, because if even mental events are just physical, then there's nothing that's not physical. Because the only part of the universe where anybody thinks that it's not physical is when it comes to consciousness and the subjectivity of perception. Some will say that that's a soul, that is a non-material mind, like how Descartes has argued and how many traditional versions of theism do argue. But according to physicalism, no, the behavior of a being like us, a living thing, is produced by the physical brain. And there's no other cause aside from the physical brain. Why should we claim that there are two causes instead of one? The physical cause is sole sufficient to justifiably explain the actions of a human or any other life form. Okay, so then that's this argument for physicalism, the argument from causal closure. Let me read a book from the book just for a moment, and you can hear his own statement of that. He says here, the argument I will call the argument from causal closure. The first premise of the argument is the thesis that every event which has a cause has a physical cause. The second premise is that mental events can cause physical events. For example, we normally think that events such as wanting to raise your arm, which is a thought, causes the raising of the arm, which is a physical event. The third premise of the argument is a principle of causation called the exclusion principle. And it says, and this is his wording, so I modified it a little to simplify, say just A, B, and C. His wording is, if an event E causes event E star, then there is no event E hashtag such that E hashtag is different from E, and E hashtag also causes E star. So I thought with all those additional symbols, star, hashtag, and such, A, B, and C would be a little bit more streamlined and straightforward. Okay, so yeah, it says, the conclusion of the argument is that mental events are physical events, or briefly, that physicalism is true. Because if the thesis of causal closure is true, then behavioral events have physical causes, and if mental events also cause behavioral events, then they are just physical if the exclusion principle is true. Okay. Now, very briefly, he also offers a second argument to try and convince the reader that physicalism is true. And I'm going to just put it on the board for a moment. This second one's actually a lot more straightforward, but it's not, I don't think, as interesting. Anyway, another look at this. This is the argument from methodological naturalism, he calls it. So this argument is very straightforward. There's just two premises and then the conclusion. The first premise says, it is reasonable to believe what is believed by the methods of natural science. Okay, it's reasonable to believe what's believed by natural science. And second premise, physicalism is believed by natural science. So the conclusion just follows from the premises. It says it's reasonable to believe what's believed by the methods of natural science. By the way, secondly, physicalism is believed by natural science. So if it's reasonable to believe what science does, and science assumes physicalism, then therefore physicalism is reasonable to believe. It is reasonable to believe physicalism. Okay, now to me, although the argument is clear and it makes some sense, I just think that it's a little less intellectually satisfying than the other one, and here's why I think that. Because with this argument, it sort of just outsources the intellectual labor to the community of science. So if we presume that scientists are rational and that scientific conclusions are reasonable conclusions, then if you just adopt the same perspective or viewpoint of the scientific community, then you'll kind of inherit the rationality of their viewpoints. And I don't disagree with that. I mean, like, you know, we are not capable, each single person, of learning all the highly specialized things that people focus on when they go all the way in a field like chemistry, biology, physics, whatever the case is. So a lot of us, you know, we do have to defer to the expertise of people who've worked on these things a lot more. And when they issue a conclusion, you know, we just say, okay, I accept it because it's given by the scientific community. There's nothing wrong with that. But as a philosophical argument, I do find it to be a little more satisfying when you are given a direct reason to think about as to why the conclusion is true. Here it just says, over there, the smart scientists have come to this conclusion, so just kind of follow their lead, and you'll be as rational as they are. But at least in the previous argument, although it's more complicated and a little more sophisticated, I think, it tries to tell you, here's why physicalism is probably true. I mean, it's saying there can't be more than one cause for each effect. And we know that your brain is responsible for your observed behavior. So why think that there's something separate from the brain? That would be to multiply causes beyond what's necessary to explain the phenomenon. So, I mean, that is giving at least you some kind of reason to consider physicalism true. In this case, the intellectual processes of scientists is kind of like a black box, and we just see what they tell us and we just accept it. It's fair and reasonable to defer to experts in their fields. You know, like you shouldn't just say when the doctor gives you a diagnosis, you don't know what you're talking about, who are you? You know, that's their specialization and they do deserve some respect. But at the same time, if you're going to try and arrive at a conclusion, you would like to, I think, be told why it has some kind of plausibility to your own judgment instead of deferring the judgment to other people. So anyway, yeah, a second look at trying to claim that physicalism is true. So whether viewed from the standpoint of the causal closure argument or the methodological naturalism argument, these are two different ways to get to the same conclusion, that it's best to believe in physicalism. So now you've seen like a study in contrasts, as we've done throughout the semester. One person has argued for dualism, one has argued for physicalism. So there's a little more actually on the physicalism topic that we have to still talk about when we return from our Thanksgiving holiday week. So you know there's no class next week. It's going to be Tuesday of the, I'm kind of lost on the date, but you know the Tuesday after Thanksgiving week, this is when we return. To anybody who considers the topic of philosophy of mind for their essay prompt, you know, because there's three options, and one of them is this material on philosophy of mind. At a minimum, you do have to report on Descartes and Stoljar, because the prompt itself says that you have to discuss supervenience, which only Stoljar goes over. So you'd have to, at a minimum, refer to both of those authors, because you have to compare and contrast dualism and physicalism, and the only dualist author that we're really reading is Descartes. So you would compare Descartes with Stoljar, and then there's two more authors in the subject that I'm going to cram into the Tuesday meeting. So anybody who wants a little more context and doesn't feel too bothered by waiting until we return, you would still have at least a week, and you could work on most of the paper if you chose to write on the first prompt, or whichever prompt it is that deals with philosophy of mind. Because we have to quickly review the essay by Alan Turing, and JJC Smart. They're both pretty short. The point that they're making can be pretty quickly addressed, but we have to leave that until the Tuesday of our return. So anyone who wants to work on the time topic or the epistemology topic, all of that material is there. And in fact, you can start working on the philosophy of mind topic because most of it is going to be covered by the work of Descartes and Stoljar. But to integrate, if you would like, some of the insights of JJC Smart and Turing, you could hold off on at least some of that until we return, and you'd be able to complete probably most all of the essay without it. So that's just my update on the schedule and where we're at and where we're going to be. So, all right, guys. Does that sound good to you? Are we all on the same page? If you feel like you don't have any questions or comments for now, let me know, and then we'll kind of just close the meeting and come back after our holiday. Anybody? Let me know. Where are you at? What's up? Just in the chat. Are you ready to say goodbye? Sounds good? Okay. Well, thank you for your comment. Anybody else? I just want to make sure I'm not ignoring any questions because we're only together in these live real-time chats so often. So it's always a great opportunity. If you have any extra thoughts, comments, questions, anything you need, just let me know. But I'm also going to be checking my emails, regularly throughout the break. Maybe Thanksgiving Day itself, I'll be preoccupied, but other than that, I'll be looking at messages. And again, I do invite anyone who's not checked on their grade and they would like to know anything about their midterm or first essay, just let me know and I'll be happy to help you and tell you what your grade is and give you whatever comments. Okay, guys, so have a happy Thanksgiving. Stay safe. Try to stay healthy. Don't get up in anybody's face without a mask or whatever. Take care of your families and stuff, and be careful about big gatherings and all that. But do your best and try and just take reasonable precautions. Otherwise, in general, I'll just see you guys back on the Tuesday after next week. Okay. Take care. Yes. Thanks again. Baby Moose, one love. Thank you.